a journalist. He's the managing editor of our partner paper at the OC Weekly, but also the author of Ask a Mexican, which we run every day in Westword. Gustavo. Very good sport. Tom Tancredo, started out Denver native, teacher, one of the House crazies in the legislature when he served with Castro. Ronald Reagan appointee, 5-term congressman, presidential candidate, gubernatorial candidate, and, as I said, a very good sport, Tom Tancredo. It is bright. And we are going to let Gustavo have the first question for Tom.
Sorry, we're on Mexican territory here, so exactly, sure. I want to thank all of you, first of all, for coming out tonight. I really do. I want to thank I want to say hi to all the people seeing us on the live stream at home from Westword and my hometown of Orange County. I really like that. And, you know, Tom is somebody that I have slammed repeatedly in my column. Tom is somebody who he's never read my column. He's never read my column, which is okay. It's okay. So, Tom, I continue to call you always a know-nothing. I continue, and we can have, you've been called worse, I'm sure. And you see, in my column, I address these issues of Mexican immigration, and I do believe you can have rational discussions about the economic impacts of legal immigration. You can talk about, you know, the various factors, but there's one thing in following your work that one thing I'm fundamentally opposed to you about, and so I'm going to ask it to you in the form of a question, because I know you're saying, or you've said a lot, that unlimited migration to this country is causing people to not assimilate, is causing people to not become Americans, is different from the immigration from your grandparents' generation, or your grandfather's generation of a couple, two generations ago. So, let me ask you this. My dad came to this country illegally in the trunk of a Chevy. My mom dropped out of school in 9th grade. They've lived their lives in the United States, 40-some years. 95% of their lives, they speak in Spanish. My first language was Spanish. I grew up in an all-Mexican neighborhood. I grew up in a neighborhood where everybody from our region of Mexico migrated. So I basically grew up in Mexico. So how is it that I'm talking to you in English if we can't assimilate, if the children of illegal immigrants can't assimilate, or if this current generation of immigrants, as you say, do not assimilate as quickly as others?
Well, Gustavo, the fact that you do what you do, the fact that you write the column that you write, the fact that you are so defensive about this issue is an indication that acculturation and assimilation has not occurred.
Really?
That's
really? I'm talking to you in English, I'm wearing a suit, and I have Chuck Taylors.
Brand new.
They're my magic Chucks. I use them when I need to slay the dragon.
It is the central issue. I think, and it's excellent that we started off with that, Gustavo, because we can and do argue all the time about the economic implications of massive immigration, both legal and illegal, especially at times of 10% unemployment. But beyond that, even if we had 4% unemployment, massive immigration that does not come along with massive assimilation is problematic. And just learning English is not the only way to determine whether assimilation has gone on. Your commitment, and this is something that no one is going to actually be able to, I think, identify in you, because you can say whatever you want to say about how you feel about Mexico vis-a-vis the United States. But I think it was a gentleman by the name of Juan Hernandez. Do you know Mr. Hernandez?
Yeah, he used to work for the government of Mexico, right?
He did. He is a dual citizen of the United States and Mexico. He taught, may still teach at the University of Texas. and was on the Vicente Fox cabinet. He was in charge of a newly created ministry in Mexico called, at the time, the first time, right out of the box, it was called the Ministry for Mexicans Living in the United States. It later changed to be a little more all-inclusive, I suppose. But he was a fascinating fellow with whom I had a number of debates. And he was, why I found him to be so fascinating is because he was so candid. And he said, he talked about what his purpose, what his role was as the head of that ministry. And he said it was to first encourage immigration into the United States from Mexico, and it didn't matter whether it was legal or illegal. The government would help provide the transportation, do whatever they could to move as many Mexican citizens into the United States as possible. When I asked why that was what he was doing, he said, well, it's a win-win situation. We have a huge unemployment problem for people between the ages of 18 and 25. We can essentially ship them to the United States. You get cheap labor. They send back money. And when we got to the real crux of the issue about assimilation, he said, half of his time was spent in the United States in order to assure that the population, the Mexican citizens who were coming, did not go native on them. You know? And went on to say, and I think it was an ABC interview not too long thereafter, he said, it is the hope of the Mexican government that Mexicans in the United States will not, in fact, assimilate at least past the 7th generation, that they will hold their allegiance to Mexico. This was their attitude, this is the Mexican government's attitude, and I think to a certain extent, maybe even yours.
And you really think the Mexican government is capable of succeeding in something like that?
Well, of course, they have a number of things that they can do. You know, they work hard at it. You have people who are working along with them. It doesn't take just the Mexican government. In the United States, we have enormous numbers of people who are absolutely committed to this idea of a sort of, I call it a cult of multiculturalism. The idea that there's nothing of value in the United States, that people coming here from any country, not just Mexico, should retain their allegiance, not just cultural ties, but allegiance to another country. Because who would want to be part of America? So most of them are people teaching in college campuses all over the place, writing columns.
Of course.
And so the Mexican government doesn't need to do it themselves. They have all of these allies.
But, Tom, listen to a Mexican. Listen to a Mexican whose parents, again, only spoke Spanish at home. They can speak to you in English, but they prefer to live their lives in Spanish. These are Mexicans who try to instill in this son, Gustavo, and my fellow siblings, yes, you are Mexican, yes, you know, be proud of your Mexican roots, but it's a failing effort. I'm telling you, as somebody who, when I entered kindergarten, all I did was speak Spanish. Within 2 years, I spoke English. I technically am probably much more American than I am Mexican, and I am not an exception. I am the rule. Millions of people of my generation, we have we have sentiment for our culture, Mexican society, but at the end of the day, we're still here in the United States. And what exactly though do you ask of us? I went through college, I graduated from high school, got my master's degree, I pay taxes, I vote. I don't vote Democrat or Republican, so that'll make you happy as a third-party candidate. I usually vote Green or Libertarian, either or, I just flip it around. Yeah, I know, whatever. But so, what then? What more do you want? I mean, I've had friends who served in the military. The first casualty of the Iraq War in Orange County was Jose Angel Garibay, who was an illegal immigrant who came to this country and only got his citizenship after he died in the Iraq War. So what exactly are you asking of us in terms of, at what point then do Mexicans become American?
I want you, here is exactly what I want. Coming to the United States, you're an anchor baby, right? Your parents came here illegally.
Of course I'm an anchor baby, we're not proud of it.
And so, well, good for you, but the fact is your parents came here illegally, they had a baby here, you became a citizen as a result of that. The way in
actually the Constitution allows me.
No,
oh
yes, no, it doesn't. It's just an interpretation you have of the 14th Amendment, but one that has never actually been determined by
1982 law.
No, that was Lao. That was a totally different issue because the Chinese immigrant that they were talking about was here legally, so his offspring was certainly a citizen. So it's a totally different situation. But the reality is this, that you can be a beneficiary of all of the things that the United States has to offer, undeniably, as you are. You described yourself as someone who took advantage of the opportunities, and God bless you for it. That's exactly what we all would expect and hope for of anybody living in this country. The question becomes one of not just the opportunities that America provides, because everybody came here for that. Mm-hmm. My grandparents, 1890s, early 1900s, that's exactly, they came here to access the opportunities that America provided, just like everybody else comes. But there was this difference, and it was observable. It was observable in any conversation you had with them about their desire, their deep-seated desire to cut the ties, especially any political ties that held them to the country of origin, and become an American. Now, what did that mean for my grandparents and my parents, who were first-generation Americans? It meant they couldn't speak Italian because their parents wouldn't let them. And it was, you know, in a way I'm sad about that, because I wish that I were bilingual. I wish that I had a hard enough time with the language, the only language that I have.
I just know Vafanculo, that's all.